The ninth season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. I am really excited this week because I was brought up in a volunteer tradition in my family. My mother and father were very volunteer oriented. And in Nebraska, we have a thing called the Nebraska Volunteer Service Commission. But I have to admit that it was a bit confusing to me. It's still kind of a question mark. And the more I got into it, the more I thought maybe you'd like to know about this organization and the programs it administers. With me this week are Deborah Hartman. She is the Executive Director of the Nebraska Volunteer Service Commission. And Susan Burton is the head of Citizen Corps, coordinator here in the state. And that's just kind of a portion of what the commission does. So we'll start with you. The commission is broad. In fact, of the commissions in Nebraska, I think it's probably one of the most vibrant.
It is, actually. The commission is 15 to 25 governor-appointed individuals who oversee the commission's work. It's partly state agency and partly nonprofit board. And one of the things that we do is grant out money for the AmeriCorps State National Program in Nebraska. We also recognize volunteers through the Governor's Points of Light Award, the First Lady's Awards on community service, and Citizen Corps is also a part of what we do.
We should mention, and you prominently display this on your website, which people will see throughout this show, that it's 100% funded by federal dollars. So unlike many of the commissions that struggle to remain alive in Nebraska because of our budget problems, you at least do not have that problem.
That's right. We are 100% federally funded. We've existed for 10 years now. We're starting our 11th year. And we've been a well-kept secret that we're hoping to change. One of the really exciting things about the commission that I'd like people to know is that for every federal dollar that we bring in, we more than triple that value in Nebraska communities. The federal dollars come in, we set up AmeriCorps teams, they're bringing in community volunteers.
Okay, let's explain how this works. I remember when they established AmeriCorps and it sounded, oh, this is this great thing and it will help those younger people generally, but not necessarily, that are, you know, have the volunteer spirit and need some experience. And you tell me what it's all about, because I never really got the whole deal on it.
Well, it's like the Peace Corps, only it happens in this country. They tend to be younger people, but they're not always.
Necessarily.
Right. You have to be at least 17. And a lot of people who are looking for money for college will join AmeriCorps. They'll take a year and do service in local communities, and then they'll have some scholarship money. But we even have PhDs and master's degrees, people who are retired in AmeriCorps. It's a focused project. It's focused service. So you'll have a team of AmeriCorps members that are placed with a nonprofit agency. They're the funder. We grant the funds to them.
It flows through through that agency.
Right.
So.
And an example here in Omaha is the Lutheran Family Services offices. They have a cadre of about 35 members across the state that are doing things like immigration work for new Americans. They're doing after-school help, after-school programming, homework help. You name it. The local communities determine the need. The funding is available to place dedicated members who will go out into the community and gather volunteers and do specific service activities to show some outcomes. And that's very important too.
Now, before we get into some more the specific projects and kinds of how the money, how you could get the money in your organization, the AmeriCorps members, which then go out and, you know, we parlay their interest and the money we're, you know, helping the stipends and things we're giving them to get more volunteers. So it sort of grows.
Absolutely.
But there is a stipend involved?
There is a stipend. One of the program models has a stipend. Not all of them do. But the stipend is really to reduce or to help with their expenses. It is not a payment.
No, it's not a huge amount of money.
That's right. It's very, it's poverty wages. And they're not even really wages. They're just to help with expenses. They're not employees. They're not paid volunteers. They're dedicated volunteers. It's a little bit like our volunteer army. You know, we also pay them It's a volunteer army that's dedicated to citizen service rather than military service.
And as I understand it, these organizations, what kind of organizations can apply for this funds? We should mention that an RFP for new proposals was just put out and can be found on your website.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
organizations that have not been aware of this or may have been thinking about it, now's the time to look at the website.
And on that RFP, there's a list of eligibility, but basically it's anything that is not exclusively for profit. So if it's a nonprofit agency, government, county offices, anything like that can apply for AmeriCorps. There's a matching funds requirement. All that's detailed on the website as well. So the local agencies are kicking in a little bit. That's part of the leveraging. It's a match of federal resources, local resources, and human resources in the volunteers.
Okay, so we've got AmeriCorps and we've got, so tell me about some of the projects in Greater Nebraska, because to show the diversity.
Oh, I'd love to. There's some really exciting things that are happening. We have 5 programs that are funded just through the Commission this year. Many of them are dealing with youth is a high priority. We have had programs dedicated to agricultural and sustainable farming. We've had some environmental
I found that
programs.
one interesting to
Yeah,
read about.
that was a very exciting program. Right now there's a program going on in Fairbury where the AmeriCorps team has rehabbed an old abandoned building and made it an after-school center for local kids.
What a great
Fabulous
thing.
project, just fabulous.
And what organization then was the main organization for
Blue
that?
Valley Community Action is the grant holder. They brought in a team of AmeriCorps members. There's a different model. It's like a SWAT team. They came in and raised the roof, and there are AmeriCorps members placed there right now that actually do the homework help and run the center. We have a program in City of Lincoln that's working at the community centers there, and they're also beginning an oral history project with the cultural centers. Lincoln Action Program runs the gamut of all human needs that Lincoln Action Program
Yes.
already does. Lutheran Family Services, I talked a little bit about. And we have a program here in Omaha that was named one of the most innovative in the country. And that is the Monroe Meyer Institute at the University of Nebraska
Right,
Medical
which
Center.
deals with developmentally delayed children, and some of them are
Yes.
really extreme.
And physical disabilities as well. That program is a unique model. Many of the members have disabilities, and they're working with a clientele with disabilities. We also have some funding that helps us educate our AmeriCorps programs about recruiting and retaining members with disabilities, because everybody can serve.
Oh, and certainly when disabilities are involved, this is kind of, I hate to use this phrase, but in a sense it's job training. It's a way to gain a skill or enhance a skill, so that if you did take a year off school, it's not it's not totally altruistic. You gain leadership skills, I'm guessing,
Absolutely.
really big time.
That is one of the most wonderful things about AmeriCorps. Sure, they're doing direct service and they're helping out communities, but about 20% of the members' time is spent in leadership development and professional development. We do training at the Commission. The grantees do training. We have funds to send those members to other trainings. These folks come out of AmeriCorps, it's an experience of a lifetime, and they say that.
I know a young woman who worked with Habitat for Humanity through the AmeriCorps.
Sure.
And she's just a stellar individual. And she has spread then. She's stayed working with them, became a paid employee. But she just talked about her days and just not knowing really what she was doing. And now she's like, I think she could build anything, you know, and she's very inspirational to the volunteers that work, which is mostly a volunteer organization, Habitat is.
Right. You know, it's an incredible program, and they've done some studies nationwide, a longitudinal study to see what happens to members after they leave their service, because it's time limited. They can only do this for a few years. And many of them are staying civically engaged. They're going on to work in the public sector, in the nonprofit sector. They're the movers and the shakers out there. It's really an incredible experience for members.
Well, we're going to hop back. I do want to ask, remember Vista?
Yes.
You know, I remember that was the sort of the first, and correct me if I'm wrong chronologically, where we sort of took that Peace Corps concept and applied it here in this country. And I thought it had died and gone to heaven, and then I see that it hasn't.
Still around and thriving. You're right. It was President Johnson's war on poverty, I think, and it has been sort of. It's always existed. It is now under the AmeriCorps umbrella. One thing about National Service is they keep adding pieces on it, and we're all a happy family under this umbrella. AmeriCorps Vista is still very much focused on poverty. And the wonderful thing about an AmeriCorps Vista member is they help nonprofit agencies build their infrastructure. So maybe they don't have a volunteer database. They can do that. Maybe they don't have anybody to write grants. They can do that.
Or maybe they just don't, the organizational skills need to be.
Exactly.
You've seen people, I'm sure, I have over the years, where they're just a little more maybe naive, or
Yes.
they're a little, they've got all the stuff inside to get it together, but they just haven't had the experience. They never were
Yes.
brought up around organizational. My mom was in every organization, and so you could, all I had to do was watch, really, basically, to get at least the beginnings of that. But it's a culture.
It is.
And a good nonprofit, it does not just happen.
That's right. And
so-
Vistas are great facilitators at building that organizational
Do
development.
we have any Vista in
We have
Nebraska?
lots of Vistas in Nebraska. We have about 50. And actually the commission is going to be getting a Vista soon, we hope. We have an application outstanding to do some outreach into rural communities that will hook into Citizen Corps. Susan will probably tell you a little bit about that later. Vista is part of the National Service family, and we have a lot of AmeriCorps state and national programs working with Vistas, working with Senior Corps.
Parlaying all these things into,
Absolutely.
so that it reaches exponentially
Yes.
around. Well, let's hop to the corps.
Sure.
And let's talk about Citizen Corps. Citizen Corps is, as you look at the things that it includes, and in this state, you don't handle all of them as they do in some states, like Medical Reserve Corps and that kind of thing.
There is a Medical Reserve
Right,
Corps.
but
in
it's
a
handled by the United Way in Omaha. Is that right?
Well, actually, any area, any community could begin their own
Their
medical
own.
reserve. And so Lincoln is actually beginning one. But at this point, Omaha has been the lead in it, and they've been excellent in the nation.
Well, let's go. I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to play teacher here. Okay, you say Citizen Corps on your website, and under it are several little corps. And what are those corps?
Right. Oh, that's a very good question. I need to update
think
that
Citizen
website.
Corps.
By the way,
I think Citizen Corps.
we're working on that.
So you got
There's three main focuses
Okay.
of Citizen Corps, and the first is education outreach, the second is training, and the third is volunteerism. And so Citizen Corps is a little different in the fact that anyone can be a Citizen Corps, and that's sort of affiliating and choosing to make a difference in safety or preparedness in a community.
And really, they're all volunteers.
Right. This one's
This
all
one
volunteers.
is all volunteer, and the
Right.
idea is to, I look around Omaha,
Right.
or you look around any small town, which really any church
Right.
thrives on volunteers.
Right.
Our whole experience is that volunteers really make things happen. But this is just kind of taking, in a sense, what we do or what we might do under other auspices and kind of
Right.
giving it a little, making it a little less amorphous.
Right. I think it's an intentional desire to bring safety to a community or to rethink what would happen if there was an emergency or disaster. How do we utilize our community resources to respond? Because all emergencies really end up being local. No matter what they are, they're local.
Well, we saw with Katrina and Hurricane Rita, we saw that you can be left in your own little island, whether
Right.
it's a block, a neighborhood,
Right.
or whatever. Whether
Or
it's
rooftop.
whether it's for 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks, you have to depend on yourself.
Right.
And that's kind of at least with the community emergency response teams
Right.
and some of your neighborhood watch, kind of explain the
Those-
different aspects
Sure,
of that.
sure.
CERT, Community Emergency Response
Right.
Team. I had to practice that one.
Yeah, me too.
Is a little separate.
Right.
So let's start with that.
Sure. The CERT training, or Community Emergency Response Training, began in an LA fire department. And so it actually predates Citizen Corps. Within the state, it predates Citizen Corps as well. The training is basically a 20-hour training where people learn basic skills for personal preparedness, but even things like suppressing fire and pulling someone out of a building, or even cribbing up a building to pull someone out of a building. Incidentally, this weekend up in Sheridan County, clear out in Rushville, there's a Vista who's working with an RSVP, which is a retired senior volunteer program, to do a CERT training for their Citizen Corps Council and communities around. So the CERT training is one where people build team interactions to respond to a local disaster.
And I think recently they had a CERT training at the state capitol
Right.
because they had
You
never
were gonna
really.
come.
I was, but I couldn't. But the concept was that is there has never really been any concerted training for what if certain things happen while we're in this building.
Right. You know, there's an amazing staff with the security there in the building, and they were also concerned that, you know, just the conception of this building, you know, it feels like a tower, and do people feel safe? What are they thinking about? And so they wanted to offer this to people within the building. And also it was part of the awareness during September Preparedness Month, and it came at a time during Katrina. But I tell you, it's interesting that citizens who take the class then have this amazing metamorphosis in, oh my goodness, I can lift buildings. I can, you know,
It's
and
pretty amazing to
Turning
watch.
gas off in your home.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, all the kinds of things that I would, honestly, that my husband can do all that.
Right.
But the thought of anything with gas,
Right.
just scare. But I would really be empowered
Right.
by knowing that. Especially if I had children, or there were elderly people next door. I mean, there's all kinds of. You know, your neighborhood is your own little island, and
Right.
it would be a great way, whether you had a CERT training there or a more active neighborhood watch that
Right.
involves some of that training, to feel less like an island of one home. We don't have that sense of neighborhood, especially in our newer areas.
And you know, that's where the 5 programs that you've mentioned are, it's the CERT, the Neighborhood Watch, Volunteers in Police Service, Fire Corps, and Medical Reserve Corps. And CERT was the one that was focused on initially by emergency managers in the state because it brings that empowerment right away to the person. But its link with Neighborhood Watch is an interesting one to consider. If you know the people who've been trained in CERT in, you know, a 3-block area or in your neighborhood, the program is designed that if there was a tornado or something here in Nebraska and emergency responders were pulled somewhere else, a team of these people who've been trained to work together can respond together. They're not, you know, given a blessing and a badge or anything.
No.
Just more they're empowered to take care of something that they see locally.
Just as an example, you don't do EMT training, but my husband, being on the fire department, you do?
Well, no, we
But-
don't, but it's similar.
Yeah,
in
so
some
he's
ways.
an EMT, and we made sure that everyone that on our block knew that.
Oh, that's
And
excellent.
he's very quick reacting, and he's, you know, I've seen him in action. So we made, you know, he's not Superman, but
Right.
if you have even a question, and it, you know, first call 911.
Right.
But if you even have a question about something, you know, he's got some training, and or just, you know, there's an older lady next
That's great.
door. So. It's that knowing who can do what,
Right.
Because everybody can't do everything.
And that's what we're encouraging with Neighborhood Watch. It's a beginning. Citizen Corps is grassroots, and it depends on people to say, let's do this here. I'm the one who's responsible for this here. And so we're encouraging people in their neighborhoods to see if there was an emergency and we had to evacuate, who here might not be able to get out very easily. And then ask them, can we, you know, would it be okay with you if we checked on you? Or to encourage the person who needs to have someone check on them to tell their neighbors, you know, if you ever see something funny in my home, please check. And so we're encouraging that community building.
I noticed that under Citizen Corps that Omaha has Neighborhood Watch #1. Has like
Right,
a
right.
million. So they've included all the neighborhood watches. But I don't know. Do all the neighborhood watch groups know that they are, you know, by doing what they're doing, that they comprise a little Citizen Corps? Or are
No.
you working
They
on
don't
that?
know. They do not all know this.
But they have the beginning. They have the organizational
Right.
structure, which makes them
Right.
a perfect candidate to do some
Right.
other things. And so.
Omaha does. They do know they receive information.
Okay.
And in fact, it is the Neighborhood Watch that leads the Citizen Corps Council here in Omaha. And so they do receive it in newsletters and they receive information. But sometimes when you
I want a
see
button
it-
with my
I
neighborhood
know.
watch. Yeah, I want something that
Bumper
says, you know.
sticker. Well, you get a vest if you take the training.
Oh, okay.
And a hard hat too.
A vest and a hard hat is
Maybe
good.
backpack.
nice.
Depends
But what
on
have
where.
some of the other cities and towns done?
Yeah.
Are they involved with Neighborhood Watch, or do they incorporate the idea of Citizen Corps in maybe a slightly different way?
Right. Lincoln also has begun. They began a council about a year ago, And a council brings together some of those leaders, and that might be the fire, the sheriff, the police, Salvation Army, Red Cross. It tries to bring together any organization that has an interest in disaster emergency response or preparedness, and tries to expand to include organizations that have maybe volunteer groups or church groups or civics groups, to just be prepared or to spread information and training. Lincoln has done a very good job of getting information out about preparedness kits, and it has begun a new program that Nebraska has that, as far as I know, no other state yet, and that is the Volunteer Educator Program. And that's where citizens who say, you know, I'm not overly handy with the fire extinguisher, but I can do presentations. And so they become trained as a volunteer educator. As totally volunteer, they go to a civic group and they teach how to make an out-of-state plan or a family plan or an emergency kit.
And they can take information and
Right.
make it presentable.
Right, right. Yeah, and they're interesting.
Comprehensible and that sort of thing.
So one of the volunteers in Lancaster County has gone out to other, he's been very good at even taking it across county lines, you know, his relatives, and going to their civic organizations and doing the basic training on if you get stuck in a snowstorm, what do you do? If you get lost, what do you do? So it's interesting and very empowering for the citizens. They utilize whatever skills they have to help the people around them. That's the idea, to do it intentionally now, not waiting until the day you decide to be a hero or, you know, or run.
Oh, and then, you know, the whole thing of, what do they call it, to be able to stay in your home for so long.
Shelter in place.
Shelter in place.
Yeah.
And what to take with you. Is that included in some of the
is.
CERT training?
It is. It's the Citizen Corps, actually, you know, the Are You Ready book. And
Oh, what is that?
So it's an Are You Ready is, you can find links to this at citizencorps.gov. Many of the emergency managers have access to this. There's also 1-800 number that I can't remember that you can call and get a free
so
copy.
I can get one?
Right.
Or do I have to go through CERT training?
You can get a free copy of this. I'm sure if you went to areyouready.com or
go to
FEMA.gov,
right.
you get this. You can link to this. But in the back of it, there's in the appendix. There's the family communication plans. I know that's white. The things to pack, even your emergency numbers, little cards to keep with you, medicines, the things that you would want to keep together if you needed to grab it and take it with you.
You know, I know, you know, we've been hearing that, especially since 9/11.
Right.
Just sort of, you know, duct tape and plastic, and it became
Right.
kind of a national
Joke.
Yeah. And so I think, and unfairly so. I mean, we have very good comedians in this country who can make
Right.
anything into and make us laugh, which
Right.
we needed to do after that.
Yes.
But I think that then we sort of dismissed a little bit about
validity.
this just being personally prepared and taking personal responsibility. I mean, the fire department's supposed to put the fires out in my house, but if there's
Right.
50 fires going on,
Right. Right.
Exactly.
What do you do? And that's not the time you want to then log on to FEMA.gov to figure out what you're going to do. The shelter in place is real, and I believe it was North Carolina. Sorry, I didn't check that before I came, but
a Carolina perhaps?
A Carolina. In one of the Carolinas, there was a chemical spill recently. It was last January, I think, and they evacuated the area. Days later, I happened to read the site to see how things went, and how there were a few fatalities on that in that event. There was a man who had sheltered in place for the 6 days and waited it out, and he wasn't very far from the site. Now, if you're told to evacuate, you evacuate.
You should, yeah.
You evacuate. But until I saw that, you know, I also in the back of my mind thought, will this really work? Does this really work? And the recommendations, you know, they're recommendations for a reason. These are things you can do. There are ways to prepare. If you see a plume, avoid it. But some chemicals in your house too may be invisible. You know, take
Absolutely.
steps. And this book is a good help.
You know, and I remember that maybe this is not a good analogy, but I learned a lot from my grandmother back because they made things out of everything. They were always ready, living in the environment they did, and the farms they settled and lived through everything. They always thought ahead.
Right.
And we're kind of an instant gratification society.
Right.
And you could do a lot, I think, to help your children by walking them through this, not to make them afraid,
Right.
but to make them self-assured.
We've done, this past summer, we began a camp on a kit kind of campaign. So put your kit together and go camping. You know, and then you find out, well, I really don't want certain products in my kit. You know, you pick the things you like, and maybe you include a teddy bear for your children, or a crayon, some crayons and coloring books, because of this experience on your kit. So it doesn't have to be about emergency disaster, the world's going to end. What are the things that are similar? And camping is a very good
It's a good,
comparable.
and they'll feel like it's an adventure.
Right, but you're prepared, and you can tell the children, if there's any time we ever have to leave quickly, you know, our camping kit's a good thing to take.
Yeah, and then they won't be as frightened. They've
Right.
done it. They've touched
Yeah,
it.
it's like
and felt it.
camping.
Right. A couple other quick things. Senior Corps. We should just touch on that because we're getting near the end. It's make foster grandparents. It's
Right.
making use of what is going to become a very large segment of the society when we baby boomers.
Exactly. We have actually a lot of Senior Corps members in the state, thousands and thousands of them. And it's actually administered through the same group that does AmeriCorps Vista, connected to the commission, but not the commission actually. We do a lot of work with them together. Foster grandparents, you mentioned that, senior companions who look out for the frail elderly, and reserve senior volunteer corps.
You know, if you ever feel like nobody needs you,
Right.
you know, there's always someone
Oh,
that
definitely.
needs you.
Absolutely. And you know what? AmeriCorps has a big push out now to recruit baby boomers as well. You can use it for grad school, pay back old student loans. Wonderful experience.
One quick item, we have about a minute left. When we say Hallam, Nebraska, and tornado, we were able to see the volunteers that were practiced move into place and help those people immediately.
Right.
Were we not?
Yes.
Worked like clockwork.
Yeah. There are many organizations, and there's a Nebraska Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster group that was very, very good at that time. They work together. They're still an organization. We work together with them in Citizen Corps as well.
Well, I want to thank you and remind people, if you feel that there's a niche that may not exist, I'll bet it does. And to give the folks at the Nebraska Volunteer Service Commission a call. Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you so
welcome.
much, Susan.
Thank you.
Join us next week for Consider This, and volunteer.
Very good.
Where's time?
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 9th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.